Isn't it astonishing how some zoo animals channel their inner Houdini? From daring dashes to sneaky escapes, these critters have given us some of the wildest moments caught on camera. It's almost as if they're plotting their next big adventure. Now let's dive into the 20 most jaw-dropping zoo escapes that have been captured for the world to see. 20. 5 lions escape enclosure. So over at Sydney's Taronga Zoo, something crazy happened on November 2nd, 2022. A group of lions, including 4 energetic cubs and their leader Atto, managed to sneak out of their spot. It all started because a part of their fence broke down, something they caught on the security cameras. It turns out a small piece of the fence gave way, causing quite the stir, especially during an event called Roar and Snore. The zoo crew quickly moved the lions to a safe place behind the scenes. After this sneaky escape, they really dug into how the enclosure was built, bringing in an expert to make sure it doesn't happen again. They're taking their time to get it right. So the lions will be chilling out of sight for a bit longer than expected. Even though the lions had a little adventure, they didn't wander off too far. 2 of the cubs did try another escape, but got quickly sorted out, with one needing a tranquilizer to be safely brought back. Thanks to the quick work of the zoo staff, Atto and the rest of the cubs were all rounded up without any fuss. The zoo made sure to tell everyone that keeping visitors safe is their top priority, with a thorough checkup of the place and extra security all around. 19. San Diego Zoo's escape. Living as an ape, whether out in the wild or in a zoo, is full of interesting stories. Let's look at 2 apes with very different lives. The sad tale of Harambe and the adventures of Ken Allen, an orangutan who weighed about 250 pounds and loved his freedom. He became quite the star in San Diego after he managed to escape in 1985. Ken Allen was no ordinary orangutan. He was like the Houdini of apes, always finding a way to escape. Even when he was young, he showed he had a knack for getting out of his enclosure. His escapes were legendary, involving throwing rocks or teaming up with other orangutans. People loved his stories so much that they made merchandise and songs about him. The zoo staff had to get really creative, even dressing up in disguises and setting up complex security to try to keep him in. But Ken was smart and managed to escape several times, becoming a bit of a celebrity. He wasn't shy around his fans and even posed for photos. As time went on, the zoo worked hard to keep Ken happy with friends and better security, which eventually made his escape attempts less frequent. Even though he passed away in 2000 from B-cell lymphoma, people still remember his incredible life. 18. Bear broke out of zoo. So, on the morning of June 1st, 2018, people in Western Germany woke up to what sounded like a bad joke. A bunch of animals, including 2 lions, 2 tigers, a bear, and a jaguar, were reported missing from the Eiffel Zoo. It turns out a huge thunderstorm had turned their homes into swimming pools, and it looked like they all decided to take off. The local officials got super serious, kind of like in those action movies, and told everyone to stay inside. The search team, with firefighters and police, started looking everywhere, and they even used a drone to help find the animals. But then, things took a surprising turn. It seemed that the flood made it look like the animals had escaped when they actually hadn't gone far from their homes. Well, except for the bear, who really did get out. Sadly, his freedom didn't last long. He was found wandering on one of the zoo's paths, and well, his story ended there. 17. Tiger found in residential area. There was this young tiger, collar and all, who decided to take a stroll through a neighborhood in Houston, Texas, back in May 2021. This wasn't something you'd expect to see outside your window, but it happened and quickly grabbed the attention of people all over the world on social media. This tiger, named India, wasn't just any ordinary cat. At 9 months old, this big kitty became the star of a very odd story. Victor Hugo Cuevas, who was apparently looking after India, was seen trying to get the tiger back into his house. But when the police showed up, he disappeared with India. The next day, Cuevas was caught, but the tiger was nowhere to be found, starting a citywide search. The story got even more interesting when, after almost a week, India was safely given to the authorities by Cuevas' wife, Georgiana. It turned out that Cuevas was out on bail for a murder charge, which added even more drama to the story. Even though Cuevas's lawyer said he didn't own the tiger, everyone was more concerned about India's safety. In the end, India was taken to the Cleveland Amory Black Beauty Ranch, a place that takes care of animals in need. 16. Goldie the Golden Eagle. Now, there's this story about Goldie the Golden Eagle that really stands out for the spectacle it created. Back on February 28, 1965, while they were cleaning the cages at the London Zoo, Goldie saw his chance and took off for an adventure over Regent's Park. He dodged capture with the kind of elegance and skill you'd expect from a golden eagle. For 12 whole days, Goldie was the main attraction in the city, avoiding the efforts of police, firefighters, and even a brave BBC reporter who tried to tempt him back with an Ethiopian bird pipe. Goldie wasn't just any escapee. He became a celebrity with wings, drawing a crowd of 5,000 people. Everyone was so eager to see him that they caused traffic jams and a big buzz around Regent's Park, all wanting a glimpse of this eagle enjoying his freedom. The adventure ended when Joe McCorry, the zoo's deputy head of birds of prey, cleverly used a dead rabbit to lure Goldie and caught him, believe it or not, with his bare hands. But Goldie's spirit for adventure was too strong. 10 months later, he escaped again, this time for 4 days. 15. Hippo Escape. Now, on to another unforgettable story that happened in Tbilisi, Georgia, back in 2015. The city, usually known for its beautiful scenery and deep history, was hit by a massive flood. It wasn't just water flooding the streets. The flood broke down the zoo's barriers, and suddenly, animals like lions, tigers, bears, wolves, hyenas, and even a hippopotamus were out in the open. Imagine seeing a hippo walking down one of the main roads in Tbilisi. Sounds crazy, right? But that's exactly what happened. The residents woke up to a scene where their city had turned wild. The hippo walking around became the main event, and people worked together carefully to corner it. They used a tranquilizer gun to safely calm the hippo down, a moment that everyone was relieved to see. This hippo, along with other animals from the zoo, showed the city that hope wasn't lost, even in such a disaster. 14. Wolf escaped from Los Angeles Zoo. In the late 1970s, Griffith Park, known for the famous Hollywood sign and Griffith Observatory, had an unusual guest. This visitor wasn't there for the tourist spots, but was actually a wolf named Virginia who had managed to escape from the Los Angeles Zoo. Virginia amazed everyone by showing off some serious climbing skills to get out of her enclosure. She could climb trees and use the branches to jump over the fences, something the zoo staff thought was impossible for a wolf. After being caught a few times, Virginia kept on planning escapes, each time coming up with new ways to get past the fences. Her last escape was in 1979, when she disappeared into the wilds of Griffith Park and was never found by the zoo staff again. People visiting Griffith Park back then might have walked right past her, thinking she was just another coyote, without realizing she was actually a much more impressive animal. Thankfully, Virginia didn't cause any trouble or attack anyone. It seems she preferred to keep to herself. Wherever she ended up after her last escape, let's hope she found the freedom and peace she seemed to be looking for. 13. Escaped zebra cobra. Here comes a wild adventure story when a venomous zebra cobra, which you'd normally find in southern Africa, showed up on the suburban scene. This happened one Wednesday night, and the Raleigh police, after getting a heads up, managed to nab the sneaky snake using just a simple red bucket, ending its little adventure. The snake had sneaked out of its house and was then taken to a place that could properly take care of a venomous critter like itself. The owner of the snake, Christopher Gifford, who is pretty into venomous snakes and talks about protecting reptiles online, didn't say much while all this was happening. To catch the zebra cobra, they used glue traps, which got some people talking about whether that was the right thing to do. But it did the job without hurting the snake. In North Carolina, if you have a venomous exotic snake and it gets out, you're supposed to let the authorities know right away. 12. 7-month-old giraffe escape. When it comes to surprising getaways, the story of a 7-month-old giraffe sneaking out of an Indiana zoo in 2018 is definitely one for the books. Giraffes, with their long necks, aren't exactly the animals you'd think of as sneaky, but this little one found herself wandering around a staff parking lot, not far from where she was supposed to be. Luckily, the high fences around the parking lot kept her from straying too far and helped the zoo staff quickly bring her back. It looks like this giraffe might be up for more adventures in the future. Then, there's this story from 2012 in Imola, Italy, where a giraffe from the Rinaldo Orfeo circus decided to take a tour of the town. This giraffe turned the streets into its own personal stage, running with the kind of elegance you'd expect from a pro athlete while the circus staff tried to keep up. The chase, which could have been a scene from a comedy movie, ended calmly with the help of 2 tranquilizer darts, making sure the giraffe got back to the circus safely. 11. Flamingo on the run for 17 years. Back on a windy 4th of July in 2005 in Wichita, Kansas, something happened that turned one flamingo, known as number 492, into a bit of a legend. This bird, originally from Tanzania, was living at the Sedgwick County Zoo when it decided to take off into the wind and start an adventure. Fast forward nearly 17 years, and a fisherman named David Foreman saw our winged explorer in Texas, a sighting confirmed by the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. They named the flamingo Pink Floyd. This bird was one of 2 that escaped. The other one, known 347, went north and hasn't been seen since. At the zoo, they usually trim the flamingo's feathers to keep them from flying off, a safe and routine thing to do that fits with their natural molting cycle. But Pink Floyd and its buddy left before they could get their feathers trimmed, helped by a thunderstorm that stirred things up. For 5 years, people have spotted Pink Floyd living happily along the Texas Gulf Coast, where it finds plenty of brine shrimp to eat, which keeps its feathers bright pink. The zoo folks have come to a kind of peace with Pink Floyd's adventures, happy for any news of its well-being. 10. Spider monkey. Back in 1995 at Indiana's Columbian Park Zoo, a spider monkey mother and her baby pulled off an escape that could have come right out of a story. Their adventure started when some local troublemakers left a stolen paddle boat in the moat around the monkey's island home. Seeing their chance, the monkey duo used the boat to float across the moat and set off to see the world outside. Once they got to dry land, they really took their adventure up a notch. They were seen swinging from power lines and traffic lights, turning the city streets into their own playground. This certainly surprised the people watching and caused a bit of traffic chaos. However, their taste of freedom didn't last long. By the afternoon, they were safely caught, thanks to some well-aimed tranquilizer darts, and brought back to their home. 9. Dolphin rejoins pod. Back in 2009 near South Korea, a group of fishermen ended up catching a dolphin by accident in their nets. Instead of letting her go back to the ocean, they saw a chance to make some money and sold her to an aquarium. This dolphin, Sampal, who was about 10 years old, found herself stuck in a small pool, a huge change from the vast ocean where she used to live and swim freely with her dolphin friends, doing tricks for people's entertainment. The story of how Sampal was caught and then sold didn't sit well with the public once it came out. People really got behind the idea of setting her free, leading to a big campaign that eventually ended up in court. The Korean High Court looked at the case and made a big decision in favor of animal rights. They said Sampal should be returned to the ocean, to her natural home. This decision was a big deal for everyone who cares about protecting wildlife and thinks deeply about whether animals should be kept in captivity. 8. Polar bear let loose. Let's talk about a wild story that happened back in 1969 at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, involving not 1, but 7 polar bears. These massive animals, which can weigh as much as 1,500 pounds and stand up to 10 feet tall, somehow found their way out of their space. The reason? Their moat overflowed after a heavy rain, making it easy for them to climb out and explore. This all went down at night, so luckily, none of the zoo visitors were around. Can you imagine the zoo staff's surprise the next morning, finding 7 polar bears just wandering around? These bears made a snack run, hitting up a refreshment stand for marshmallows, chips, and ice cream, and even tossed a cash register aside, probably because it wasn't edible. What's funny is that when it came time to go back, 5 of the bears just walked back to their exhibit like nothing happened. The other 2? Well, one was hanging out near the grizzly bear area, maybe trying to make some new friends, and the other was checking out the zoo's restaurant, likely in search of more food. To get these last 2 stragglers back, the staff had to get creative with car horns, sirens, and a few warning shots. In the end, everyone, including the bears, was safe, and the zoo managed to avoid a potentially huge problem. 7. 3 rhinos. Falling asleep on the job is a big no-no, especially if you're supposed to be watching over rhinos. But at the Ramat Gan Safari in Israel back in 2015, a snoozing security guard missed the exact moment when 3 clever rhinos decided it was the perfect time to sneak out through a gate that nobody was watching. Luckily, others at the safari were more alert and noticed pretty quickly that the rhinos were on the loose. The park manager and other staff who were wide awake jumped into action. Picture the manager chasing after these big animals. It could have looked like a funny scene from a movie if it wasn't actually serious. They even had to call the police to help make sure everyone outside the safari was safe. Getting the rhinos back home involved some smart thinking. The staff used clapping to grab their attention and then led them back to where they belong, showing how well they can work together under pressure. As for the guard who was caught napping, he ended up losing his job. It was a hard lesson that sometimes, especially when you think about the chaos a few loose rhinos could cause. 6. Slippery, the sea lion. It's been over 60 years since Slippery, a sea lion, turned a regular day in London into an unforgettable moment, sparking a huge celebration. But now, nobody seems to know exactly where he's buried. Back in 1958, Slippery was supposed to be one of the main attractions at Storybook Gardens. But over the years, as the park changed, the spot where Slippery was laid to rest got lost in the shuffle. He passed away in 1967, and they buried him under a rock with a plaque in the park. However, now that the park has become a lively spot for kids, there's no sign of Slippery's final resting place. Bill Clark, who used to take care of the animals at the zoo, feels sad that this piece of the park's history is slowly disappearing. There's a bronze statue near the entrance that hints at Slippery's story, but it's like a puzzle with missing pieces. 5. Tokyo Sea Life Park. So over at Tokyo Sea Life Park, they've got these penguin pools that are pretty fancy, designed to feel like the real deal. But even with all that effort, one Humboldt penguin, number 337, decided it wasn't enough. Despite a huge 13-foot wall and some scary barbed wire, in 2012, this little adventurer found a way out and headed straight for Tokyo Bay's open waters. The story of this young escapee, just a year old, played out over several months. The zookeepers were on a mission that seemed almost impossible, finding their penguin in the massive urban waters around Tokyo. There was a lot of worry back at the aquarium. After all, living in captivity doesn't really prepare you for the wild. But when they finally caught Penguin 337, it surprised everyone. It wasn't just getting by, it was doing great. The deputy director of the aquarium noticed, relieved and impressed, that the penguin hadn't lost weight and wasn't stressed out at all. It turned out Penguin 337 had adjusted incredibly well to life in Tokyo Bay, showing that even in a bustling city like Tokyo, there's room for a bit of wild adventure if you're bold enough to go for it. 4. Leopards break out. In April 2021, 3 leopards pulled off a daring escape from a safari park in eastern China. They saw their chance during a cleaning session and made a break for it. The first leopard didn't get far, getting hit with a sleep dart just 2 days after tasting freedom. The second one had a bit of a wild month out and about before they caught it, even though it had hurt its back leg. The third leopard, though, decided to play by its own rules and disappeared without leaving any clues, totally avoiding getting caught. The search to find them was massive. Officials brought in about 1,700 people and almost 1,000 drones. They even tried using 100 live chickens as bait, hoping the leopard would show up looking for an easy meal. Meanwhile, people living nearby were told to keep their doors locked and to stay inside as much as possible, just to be safe from the unexpected visitors. As time went on without any news of the third leopard, people started worrying about whether it could make it on its own, especially since it was used to living in the zoo and probably didn't know much about hunting in the wild. There's still no official word on what happened to it, 3. Egyptian cobra. So, back in late March 2011, there was this cobra from the Bronx Zoo that decided it wanted a little adventure and managed to sneak out of its home. This caused quite a stir in New York, with people being a mix of worried and fascinated. After searching for 6 days, the zoo's team, led by Jim Breheny, found the cobra hiding out in a dark, quiet spot within the zoo. They used some special gear to catch the snake without any trouble. This little escape artist didn't just make headlines, it became a hit on the internet, especially on Twitter. It started posting tweets that made it sound like it was planning more adventures, quickly gathering a huge bunch of followers who were all in on the fun. At a news update, Breheny told everyone that the cobra was doing just fine and shared how they used mouse-scented wood shavings to play on the snake's keen sense of smell, which helped them catch it. He also pointed out that snakes usually prefer to stay out of the way rather than pick a fight. The zoo team was pretty sure the cobra hadn't left the building it lived in, and they were right. They found it not too far from where it had slipped away. They had closed the reptile house to visitors just to be safe while they looked for the snake. 2. Rhesus monkeys. Back in the 1930s, there was this wild breakout at a roadside zoo owned by Frank Buck in Long Island. This place was home to 570 rhesus monkeys who lived on their own little island. The whole thing kicked off in October 1935 because a zoo worker accidentally left a bridge down. This mistake let 172 monkeys go on an unexpected journey. The zoo staff were all hands on deck trying to find them. A few hours into the chaos, they found 50 of these monkeys causing a ruckus on the train tracks, even stopping a train. By the end of the night, 30 monkeys had come back on their own. The story gets even wilder, with reports of monkeys showing up in backyards and at fruit stands in 2 different counties, stirring up a mix of laughter and surprise among the locals. The owner of the zoo, trying to make the best of the situation, promised a free season pass to anyone who helped bring back the adventurous monkeys. This clever move got the whole community involved, and eventually they managed to get all the monkeys back. 1. Lioness roaming about. Back in 1997, the Jungle Land Zoo in Kissimmee, Florida, got a big surprise after some heavy rains messed up a lion enclosure. This led to Nala, a young lioness, taking off for a bit of unexpected freedom right near all the Disney World action. It caused such a commotion that the zoo had to close down, and everyone nearby was told to stay inside. Nala seemed to enjoy her little adventure, coming close to where she escaped from but then darting away, keeping the zookeepers on their toes for 2 whole days before they managed to bring her back safely. Then there's this wild story from Belfast, Northern Ireland in 1977. Imagine looking out into your garden and seeing a circus lion there. That's exactly what happened to one person, turning the neighborhood into a frenzy. The police and circus workers had to come together quickly to catch the lion and make sure no one got hurt. So what are your thoughts on these zoo escapes? I'm truly eager to hear your take on these astonishing breakouts, and let's stay vigilant because who knows what other incredible escape stories we might discover as we continue to explore the most unexpected moments from zoos around the world.